I don't really, Phil Rucker, know where to start with that Fox News montage. Fox has not just played with fire, but been singed with the reckless commentary of people on their air. In fact, new White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany was in a segment with Trish Regan. I believe it was coverage like that conversation that got Trish Regan sidelined. All of those hosts, I think, have touted unproven drugs for which there are now FDA warnings for a couple of them. And last night, going after Tony Fauci, while it was predictable, was still an abhorrent and pretty brazenly political effort to see.
Yeah, it's remarkable, Nicole, how much Dr. Fauci and the rest of the scientific and medical community have been turned into partisan players by the president and by his allies. And it speaks to the divide in this country. But we should keep in mind who Anthony Fauci is. He's not an Obama holdover. He was a Bush holdover before that, and he was a Clinton holdover before that. He has served 6 presidents. He's not a partisan appointee, but he's a scientist at the top of his field who's been guiding this country's infectious disease research and management to issues, crises like the one we have right now for decades. And he is trying to help guide President Trump and guide the administration here in Washington, as well as all the governors around the country who are trying to figure out what to do in their state with the best science and data that he can come up with. And unfortunately for him, he's run into the buzzsaw of a political operation to try to discredit him. And that's where we are right now.
Dr. Patel, I think one of the things that is emerging and is very clear from all the public polling is that he's dealt himself out of influencing a lot of public opinion around this. And that might be a good thing if you think it's dangerous to inject bleach to clean your lungs. Let me read you some of the polling, and you tell me if this is a bright spot for you. 86% of Americans think it's necessary to stay 6 feet apart from other people. 80% of Americans think it's a necessary measure to wear a mask. 78% of Americans think it's necessary and important to stay at home as much as possible, and 75% think it's important to avoid people you don't live with. Now, I looked at all 4 of these behaviors, all of them with 75 to 86% public support. Not one of them is a behavior that Donald Trump engages in regularly. He is regularly seen closer than 6 feet. He doesn't wear a mask. He's got his whole team at the office, not at home, and he's around those White House staffers every single day. So all 4 of those measures have a lot of public support, not one of them something Trump engages in.
No, that's absolutely right, Nicole. And yes, it is a bright spot, but I think it speaks to the fact that almost every American either knows somebody or has 2 degrees of separation from somebody that's been affected by COVID-19. So it's incredibly real. And as we're all trying to figure out how to reopen safely, it is of the utmost importance to remember that you can't have an economic recovery without being healthy. And I think Americans have voted that. And unfortunately for President Trump, all you have to do is look at his own close West Wing staffers who are now wearing masks and were scared when they found out that what I think is even just the tip of the iceberg with positive cases inside the West Wing or executive office building. But all you have to do now is look at all the staff that want to take those precautions themselves, except for the president.
Sam Stein, just your thoughts and your reporting on this real fissure, if you will, between what most Americans believe to be the unfortunate reality. I mean, there is no partisan breakdown in what people want. Everybody wants both to be safe and for the economy to come back. Nobody wants the economic Armageddon that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic. But this effort to sort of divide people into, I think it was weeks ago that Bill Barr said, people can't hide under their beds. Bill Barr, obviously, right. Always a willing participant in Trump's spin. Public didn't follow them, at least as to this point in time. What do you make of where things are right now?
Well, 2 things. One is I've been surprised at how consistent the numbers have been in favor of increasing, if not continuing the public stay-at-home measures, public safety measures. There's no real massive appetite among the public to open up the economy willy-nilly. The protests at the state capitol are not that well attended. People are taking this stuff very seriously if you look at it statistically. That doesn't mean that there is a concerted effort, predominantly among conservatives, to make an issue out of these stay-at-home orders, whether they think it's something that's being done to wreck the economy for Trump's reelection purposes, or they just think it's general government overreach. What has surprised me is the degree to which they're willing to go after people like Anthony Fauci. I mean, I don't know. I've interviewed Anthony Fauci twice. I can say unequivocally, he's probably the smartest person I've ever sat down and interviewed. He has decades of experience in this field. But more than that, he doesn't actually say that he is dictatorial. In fact, during the hearing yesterday, he said, I'm here to provide scientific analysis and input to the decision that politicians make. So what Fox News is essentially doing right now is they're creating a straw man. They're acting as if Anthony Fauci has decreed that every state must decide what to do. In fact, that's not the case. Anthony Fauci is out there making scientific-based recommendations and saying, look, use these as a foundation for what you do at the local municipal level. That seems pretty straightforward, honest, and acceptable as a policy for me, and certainly would be for any conservative in another era wherein you say, we don't want the federal government to be making these decisions. We want them to be made at the municipal and local levels. So I think this is a lot of it is just a straw man, and a lot of it is done to get a sort of tension point that can draw viewers in and, cynically increase ratings, honestly.
Increase ratings or Phil Rucker try to hold on to Trump's base for him. I mean, he's proven such an inept political actor during this time that I don't know if it's sad or humorous to see them trying to do the messaging for him. I want to ask you, Phil Rucker, what's going on with plans that have been reported to be expected from the CDC to help states make these decisions. And as Liz Cheney alluded to in her tweet, as you said, at the top of the show, Tony Fauci has worked for presidents. He was held over from President Reagan to President H.W. Bush before he worked for Clinton and Bush and then Obama and now Trump. So the idea that he has relationships out in the states and that governors don't just pick up the phone and call him themselves would be a faulty one from the president and Fox News. But the CDC was supposed to come out with some recommendations. And the last we reported, some CDC models and recommendations and projections had sort of died a quiet death once they made their way to the White House task force. What's going on with the CDC recommendations for states to reopen?
Well, Nicole, a lot of states are actually waiting for those recommendations from the CDC, in part because the guidelines that have been issued by the federal government through the White House a few weeks ago are so vague that they're leaving governors to sort of create their own rules and their own guidelines for individual industries or sectors or what the phases of the reopening could look like. They're looking for more information from the experts at the Centers for Disease Control. And our understanding and reporting for some time has been that those experts would take the lead in a pandemic response, have been doing that work, have been putting those guidelines together, and they're not getting released by the White House, in part because the White House has been taking the drafts from the CDC and then revising them to make them more vague, as happened in April. So we'll see what comes out in the next couple of days. The CDC director, Redfield, was one of the expert witnesses at the hearing, the Senate hearing yesterday, and he said in response to a question from Senator Chris Murphy, who made this very point about states wanting more information, he said that new guidelines would be coming soon, but he did not give a date and did not make any promises about how detailed those guidelines would actually be once they see the public light.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.